Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Mahmoud ElHussini, and welcome to episode 1 of Back2Basics. Back2Basics is on the business edge, brought to you by Feliciano School of Business at Montclair State University. Here at Back2Basics, myself and Professor Elias, we discuss questions and issues facing business practitioners. Today's episode, which is episode 1, focuses on a question we've been asked too often. The question is this: why is this all so hard, right? Why is it so hard in the business world? But before we get to the main question, let us introduce ourselves so you know where we're coming from. Okay. All right. So Dr. George Elias, hi, welcome to the podcast. I'm really excited to finally kick this off with you.
Thank you, Professor. I am so excited to be here as well.
I'm really happy to hear that. Myself and you, we've known each other since undergrad at Rutgers many decades ago. But for the audience, why don't you tell me about your academic and business background, please?
Sure, no problem. As you know, I've had a job since I was 9 years old with a paper route, and I was always expected to contribute to the family financially. I've had so many various jobs, from being a janitor, a construction worker, mover, valet, soccer ref, and I've done all sorts of stuff like warehouse work, IT support. We had a family business, a restaurant business. I was a dishwasher, waiter, cashier, short order cook. But kind of more relevant in a way, my professional career after college, I've been an application engineer, I've been business finance, quality assurance, production control. I've done technical work like modeling and simulations, system engineer, project engineer, program manager. I've been a principal investigator for IRAD and research. More recently, I've done a lot of business development where I was a director. I'm currently a chief system engineer. Academically, my background's mostly computer science, and I have a PhD in system engineering. Currently, I'm an adjunct professor here at the Feliciano School of Business at Montclair State University. But back to you, Mo. Tell us about your business and academic background.
Wow, George, you make it sound like you've been working for 50 years. And for those of you who don't know, by the way, real quick, George was the one that actually got me into academia at my daughter's, I think it was first birthday. He came over to her birthday party and he just mentioned it to me. Hey, do you want to start teaching, Mo? And long story short, fast forward, almost 10 years, I started with one class and then I went into full-time teaching and haven't stopped since then. I'm loving every day of it. But anyway, thanks, George. So similar to you, George, I've also been working, maybe not as young as, I didn't start as young as you have, 9 years old, but I think I was maybe 15, 16. Started working at various jobs, same thing, dishwashing, cooking. A lot of it overlaps with what you did. You know, the typical jobs that we get when we're starting out in the labor world. But switching into the corporate life phase of my life, I think my calling, so to speak, started halfway through my corporate career. Somewhere, I think, between 2000 and 2010, I think, where I started out as a data analytics analyst and worked my way up the corporate chain to focus more on business development and consulting. I think that is where I started to realize my affinity and curiosity and the underlying factors that make companies succeed. Not what we see, not the obvious tangible factors, but more behind the scenes, in between the lines kind of thing. Factors that we don't usually focus on much when we are assessing the success of a business. But anyway, we will get into that much more later on in detail.
Oh, thanks for that. The nice words you said about me, Mo. I'm really quite proud of you, and I'm glad that the teaching has worked. So, but let's just look at this way. we've both been steeped in the hard knocks of the business world and have ended up with unique backgrounds in both business and academics. But let's get to the subject of the podcast. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, and we discussed this earlier, nearly 1 in 5 U.S. businesses fail within the first year. 90% of startups fail, with 70% failing within 5 years. Ouch. Why is this all so hard?
Great question, George. Great question. I've heard this question from frustrated business owners in my consulting years many, many times. In fact, I've even myself asked this question. Why is it pretty much, I mean, you ran through some pretty scary stats that you just mentioned right now. And I want to add to it, I also see it more closely where small business owners, an employee that starts his company, he starts the company, his dream over the years is to grow. And actually he fails for one simple reason, that he grew. Like, it's all really confusing sometimes. Why is it that a business that wants to grow fails when they do grow? If you combine that with the stats that you just shared, it paints a picture that, yes, okay, we're stating the obvious. Running a business is hard, be it a retail store, a service-oriented business, a two-people company versus a company as big as Amazon, right? But I think, like, what comes to my mind when we talk about this, George, some of the reasons, I'm not going to say this is all of them, but some of the reasons that come to my mind why business is hard, the first thing that comes to my mind is, I'm just going to say it simply put, managing people is a mystery to some. Some people confuse being an expert at a technical field with being a good manager, right? So managing in general is a mystery. Also, people underestimate the importance of relationship management, be it with your team, be it with a customer, be it with a long-term client. Number 3 that comes to my mind is that most managers don't know when to lead and when to manage. Or let me rephrase, most business owners or people that are up in the corporate chain of command, they do not know when should I be a leader and when should I put on my manager's hat. And even more, what does it even mean to manage versus to lead? So that's a whole topic that we can spend weeks talking about. Number 4 that comes to my mind is the whole enigma of motivation, right? What does it mean to motivate? Is it to make someone happy? Like, what's that energy that you infuse into someone to motivate them? And what is the expectation that you get out of it? What good does it do when you motivate someone or motivate a team, right? Motivate a department, motivate a company, have a whole culture that's built around motivation. And then the other point that we all probably face is something goes wrong. Who do we blame? Is it management? Is it the environment? Is it the industry? Is it the team? Who is it that we point the finger to? Some managers, I noticed too, George, I'm going to end it with this for now, and then I will give it back to you. Some people that I've worked with in this arena, they just simply find it hard to accept that people are different, right? The co-workers they work with, their customers, their clients, their managers, they just do not get the idea or the thought that people come from different personalities, different traits, different cultures, different backgrounds, different, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, but different components that define people and make them who they are, which is, again, one person is different from the other. So what do you think? I'm going to give it back to you. What do you think about this? What do you have to add, or what are your thoughts?
You know, well, I have to be honest with you. You know, and you had shared with me these points in our pre-discussion, so they're not surprising me. But one thing you said in this version really struck me here, and one of them is that you said that even though you're perhaps a business person, is is an expert in some technical field, that doesn't mean they're necessarily an expert in managing people or managing their business. And that really struck a chord with me, I have to be honest. And the reason that is I have a technical background, and I often see very intelligent, smart, capable, motivated individuals struggle when they're in the business itself. And let me just tell you a little bit about my perspective. Business really a social science, and it's unique in the fact that most businesses are highly complex. Even if you're an entrepreneur and really not managing a whole group of people on your own, there's so many forces at play between the competition and also your customers and how to get accepted. Playing that social, I don't want to use the word, but game in a way, is very difficult to figure out. And I think that's one point. The other point I want to bring up is, in that complexity and in that social system, running a business, especially a family business or being an entrepreneur, it's very emotional, it's very personal. And because of that emotions, and because the stakes can be very high in terms of acceptance and the financial wellness for your family, emotions kick in, and it makes it even harder to deal with the complexity and to try to figure out what's going on. And sometimes those emotions can somewhat even blind you from being able to see the truth of what's really going on in your business.
Interesting that you say that. Say it, George, say it again, because it's the first one. You said it's a social what? Like business is a social...
It's a social science. And I said that on purpose.
I agree with you. Yeah.
And to give you an example of motivation, right? If from an engineering perspective, you want a car to go faster, you step on the gas pedal. But that's not how people are, and that's not how your business necessarily is. It's a very different dynamic.
I agree 100%. Like I said, it's interesting that you put it like that. And before we even continue, I want to piggyback off one word that you said, emotional. It made me think about, I think I want to say it's more from my experience plus what I see around me and how we see the work environment that we're in now. I believe more and more that people decide, let me rephrase, clients or customers decide on working with a business more based upon emotion than thought. And I'm trying to think if that's the best way to say it, but let me put it this way again. The other way around, a business is more likely to gain a customer by changing their emotion than by changing their thought process. I think customers nowadays, and that's kind of like what I'm doing now, I'm not going away from the 6 points, but I'm trying to build slowly the world that businesses operate in around us, right? We went from a couple of decades ago from being a product-centric environment to being more consumer-centric. We live in a consumer's world now with the internet, reviews, feedbacks, information. You can find everything. So customers now, I think they're looking more to build a relationship or to define the business that they're going to work with or that they want to work with. They want to know that more or first before they actually get to know the product or how much the product is. I think emotion, like you said, is a big part in a business and also outside of the business. What do you think?
Well, for certain, and that I'll bring up as you talk about it this way. I'll bring up the concept of value.
Yeah.
Right. And we know that value is highly dependent on perception and human emotion. So let me give you the example of baseball cards. Right. Baseball cards go up in value. It's just a card. Right. It's just a piece of, card stock with somebody's picture on it, but they're limited and those cards go up and down in value depending on the value that people assign to it. Whether maybe a baseball player or a sports player maybe passed away or was in the news somehow, those cards go up and down in value, right? They become a desirable or less desirable thing. And it's the same thing with business, right?
Yeah.
Folks look at value not just necessarily on the product you may be selling them, but maybe the emotion that product might bring.
True. I mean, yeah, on a bigger scale, it's kind of like, the Picasso paintings, or like paintings where the artists, the second they die, the value goes up. So I get your point. I agree with your analogy and your explanation. And that's it. That's exactly it, right? Like the world, and that's why you see all those companies that give back to society, give back to the environment. They're more environmentally conscious because they know that's what the consumers are favoring. So in addition, like you said, to the value to the product, or the price of the product, I think, I don't want to put a number on it, but I think more than 50% of the decision process has to do with much more than the product, what they're getting out of it, and how much it is. But anyway, I mean, do you have anything to add on to this, George?
Sure. I actually, one thing I'll add on there is, now we kind of, where your 6 points were looking inside the business, now we're discussing outside the business. But let's go back inside, right? If you look at, again, motivation, right? If you look at motivation, in a sense, aren't the people that work for you the motivation part? Isn't it the same way as with clients, right? I mean, folks are working at your business. Yes, you're paying them, but how motivated they are, is multi-factor, right? I said some of it's their own integrity, some of it's how they think about working at that company. Are they doing something good for people? Are they making people happy? Are they making you as a business owner happy? How does that make them feel? Do they feel valued themselves, right? So I think that, you can apply some of those ideas of the client and how they make the decisions and how they react to how folks that work in the business react to you as a business owner.
But did I understand you correct when you were saying that motivating the customer or the client in addition to motivating the employee, is that what you meant, that you need to also motivate the customer and client?
I'm seeing this idea of value and motivation, whether a customer is motivated to buy from you,
or
or an employee feels motivated, has to do with perception, emotions, how they feel. And in fact, I'll emphasize this. Some of the best companies that are known for customer service are also known for treating their employees the best.
True. Yeah. Wegmans comes to my mind. I have students in class that work at Wegmans over the past several years. They always speak very highly of it, and they speak, I think Wegmans comes to mind, and Chick-fil-A. And I noticed, kind of like what you said, they talk about the company like they own it, and they're so motivated to work there. And that and we're going to go into the motivation part and the path. How do you motivate, and what does it mean when we get into the discussion about motivation separately. But to reiterate on your point, I agree 100%. Those students, when they talk about those companies, they talk with such pride and energy that it always strikes me as very interesting that they do that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's hard, right? And the first thing you brought up also is about managing people as a mystery to some. I mean, let me just change that a little bit. People are a mystery to some. It's not just the managing of them, but the people themselves, the people inside the company, the people outside the company, quite frankly, the people that are in your competitors and what they're thinking are a mystery to some. And, if you compound that with the emotions you might feel as a business owner, I'm sure it's very, very frustrating. I was counseling some business owners recently, and I was saying, sometimes you need to find a way to detach yourself from the business and try to look at your business from a client's perspective or even a competitor's perspective.
Yeah.
Somehow you need to figure out a way to make it a little bit less emotional to allow you to start seeing what's really going on in your business and around your business.
It's funny that you say that. This past Thursday, I was sitting with a couple that own a photography place. And I was sitting with the husband, and he was talking about the business. And I'll give it to him. 5-star reviews all over, great business, great service. I even tried to take some headshots from my website. But I was sitting with them. They were interested in some coaching. They just wanted to get some ideas. They didn't sign up yet. They're still thinking about it. But I noticed one of the first things when the business owner was talking about his business, and he was asking me for some advice because he has some problems retaining customers or acquiring new customers. I told him what you just said in a different way. What I told him was, I think you need to stop loving your business and start loving your customer. Yes, we are all very proud of what we do in our business, but there comes a point where you do really have to focus on the outside more than in the inside. And when he asked me why, I told him, well, the first thing that comes to my mind is that your golden customers, your top customers, guess what? They are your competitors' top prospects. They spend night and day scanning the market, trying to get your customers or clients to go with them. So if you stop focusing on your business and start focusing on what the customer wants, that will help you keep that customer or even acquire new customers. But anyway, I mean, you just reminded me when you made that comment about what I just told him 2 days ago.
No, and it makes perfect sense to me what you're getting at. It's not don't focus on the inside operations, but the thing that makes it so difficult is that it's such a difficult balance. And again, I used the term games before, but there's multiple games that you're playing all at the same time. And I say games because, and I know, game isn't perfect, but in business we want to win, right? And but when there's multiple games going on, can you beat your competition? Can you win over a client? Can you have happy and successful, motivated employees? Can you be successful, right? All these are things that we want to do, and having the appropriate balance on how you invest in your business and provide customer support, manage your cash flow financially. These are all very, very difficult balances to keep.
Agree. George, do you mind? I want to switch to something else. Did you have anything to say about this? Because I want to bring another point up and get your opinion on it.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Look, I was going over the point that you made earlier that you were a senior program manager, you manage projects. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you did. So I want to bring up, so far we talked about number 1, and you kind of indirectly linked number 1 to number 6, where we don't know how to manage and we don't know about the people part. But anyway, we'll come back to that one. And we talked about motivation. I want to bring up number 5 that I talked about, which is when something goes wrong, who is to blame? In the many, many projects that you've worked on in your career, what does that mean to you at that point? When something goes wrong, who is to blame? What comes to your mind when I make that statement?
Yeah. So, one, unfortunately, this is kind of a reality when things go wrong, people want to start pointing fingers. In
Mhm.
fact, I've seen her, and honestly, I feel as though this is so dysfunctional. I have to be honest. If this is going on in your business, you really got to step back. Why are you pointing fingers? But let me tell you, it goes so deep with this dysfunction that I've seen folks in the corporate world all position themselves that in case something goes wrong, they
Wow.
won't be blamed, right? I mean, it's like instead of just working hard and doing the right thing, there. And I have to tell you, I called it dysfunction, and to me, this is dysfunction that comes out of fear, right?
So they're
You
kind of
have
like
fear.
actually, sorry to interrupt you, they're actually like proactively planning a defense mechanism in case something goes wrong.
Yeah, lining up other people and other reasons why it's not their fault. And again, they're spending so much energy in it to do the politicking and that social aspect that I start questioning how they could be effective even at their job. And it's a slippery slope. But I feel as though this blame game is dysfunctional, and
Yeah.
management or the team. The issue I have with that is, why isn't management part of the team, right? I mean,
Yeah.
can an individual be successful and the business go belly up? Why even have that? And yet, we as human beings are sitting there working on that game. How can I win, right? I mean, it would be like this, right? Your team. Let's talk about soccer, right? You know, your team loses at soccer, and the striker, the person that scores, says, "Well, I scored. Why didn't the goalie stop the shots?" Right?
Mm. Mhm.
It's dysfunctional of saying, "Well, I'm not to blame. I found the back of the net. My goalie couldn't stop the ball." You know,
Yeah.
but your team still lost. Why do you find the need to even think that way?
Do you think, all right, do you think it's a culture issue in the company? Is it a manager's issue? How big does it go, or how big, or is it both, or could it be one or the other? What do you think?
Oh, it's probably all of the above. But
Yeah.
you know, I would say that if management isn't part of the team and folks are pointing fingers at each other, maybe even before they know the results of there was a win or a loss, right? If they're
Yeah.
already doing that, then I would say that business has a toxic culture.
You know, George, I think in our preparations, this will be a good point to bring up when we're talking about servant leadership, right?
Yeah, I think that this would be perfect, right?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that servant leader, are they serving the business and their employees and causing, you know, a culture of motivated winners,
Yeah. Hmm.
or are we deciding, hey, is it the management? I mean, that's just poor leadership. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's just poor leadership. That if the manager is pointing fingers at their team, then they're basically saying that they're not responsible for what's going on in their business. And I think that's a failure of management and a failure to lead.
I think so too. I think, yeah. I think it's a mix of bad management and poor leadership. And like you said, which obviously then would constitute the toxic culture that serves as a fertile ground for something like this to happen. Good points. Good points. Good points. I mean, look, I know there's a couple of points that we didn't mention, and we can talk about this till the sun comes up. But I think, I don't know if you agree or not, we kind of built a little foundation, semi-environment to what it is we're going to be talking about over the next few weeks, right? I think this was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, George. And probably, unfortunately, just because of the time, I'm looking at the time now, we probably should start wrapping it up. What do you think?
Oh, no problem, Professor. We have plenty more sessions to talk, but it's been so much fun getting back to basics. Where do you think we should go from here?
I agree. It was a whole lot of fun. 100% agree. We're going to plan on digging deeper into these issues that plague the business practitioners and look at them, each one, dissect it, give it like a 360-degree analytical view to see what it means to different types of businesses. What do you think?
I think that sounds great.
All right. What do you think? Maybe next time, what shall we start with motivation? The enigma of motivation?
I think we should, and if you don't mind, I think we should talk about motivation both inside the business and outside the business, since I think that we could look at it both ways.
Sounds good. Sounds good. We will do so.
So thank you all for listening to this episode of Back to Basics on the Business Edge, brought to you by the Feliciano School of Business at Montclair State University. We hope you enjoyed this podcast.
Thank you, George, and see you next time on Back to Business podcast.
See you next time.
See you, everybody. Take care.